Doc, the floor is yours. Let's see what you've got for us.
Right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And as rightly introduced, I'll be sharing on sport governance. All right. So to give a brief background to our discussion on governance, it's mainly about organizational failures and issues. So this is not new when we talk about organizational failures and governance issue. So within the sports setting, it dates back in the 1980s. There were organizational failures in the UK. And it resulted in what we call the Cadbury Committee report in the 1993. So they submitted this report, and this is what has led into the current sport governance that we see in 2016 as the UK Code for Sport Governance. Also in Australia, there used to be organizational failures within sports. And so the Hillman report also documented organizational practices and the way forward within our sports setting in Australia. Similarly, in 1997, there was the Day Committee report as well that also led into reforms in organizational efficiencies and effectiveness in Toronto. Then we also see a report from the Australian Commission of Sport and Recreation submitting to the Standing Committee in Parliament. This was way back in 1997. So these are some of the issues that have preceded organizational failures. But what happened? There was a government intervention in all of these. And so now we are happy to have our minister here. The government should step in to have a legislation or to develop governance codes for our sport going forward. So based on this, it resulted in the 2004 and the recent UK Code for Sport Governance, as well as in South Africa, who also developed a governance code. Therefore, there's the need for a national sport governance code to be developed with a stakeholder engagement across all sport organizations to be able to help in the organizational reforms, the inefficiencies and ineffectiveness that we see today. If you reflect on what Tom presented, funding may not be a problem, but hinging on organizational inefficiencies and internal structures, when they are not appropriately put together, it results in funding issue. And so there's the need to put up together a national governance code that will really help in governance issue. We'll look at the case in Ghana here. What is really the problem with governance? There's a delay in a sport policy, and the minister in his earlier remarks indicated so. And I'm aware that some experts and individuals are putting together a national policy. We would really plead with the minister who is here and the new Director General to really quicken up this sport policy, because it is going to give us the direction, the locus, it's going to give us the governance framework that we need across our sport sectors. Particularly if we look at governance issue, sport organizations that receive funding, they are not obliged to be accountable due to the lack of governance code. And so a sport organization receives funding from government. And when government tries to get accountability of it, they tell you that the international organization might create an interference and all that. This is due to lack of governance code. And so if there is a national code that we develop, which will mean that sport organizations are going to follow a tailored processes to ensure accountability, to ensure responsibility, to ensure equity, to ensure that there are effectiveness and efficiencies in their administration and management of their sport. So going forward, I propose, looking at the sport organization that we have, there has to be a tier level of our sport organizations, depending on their size, depending on the coaches, the referee, the athletes that are under them, and the departments. We group all these sport organizations into tier level. It could be 3-tier level, it could be 4-tier level. The higher it goes, the more stricter the compliance level becomes. If we have a lesser-known sports, we can put them in tier 1, all these lesser-known sports. We now ask them to do A, B, C, D, so there will be criteria and requirements within that tier level for them to follow. If they have to receive, government funding. Very, very important. So once we put up this tier level, it will factor all the known and recognized sport organizations into the tier level for the purposes of government funding, so that we can make allocations. If we have a sport organization that is having more departments, more athletes, more disciplines, obviously you are going to need more funding. Now, how do we create that checks and balances within such an organization to be able to ensure that the organization is accountable to their stakeholders and also to government? When we put them into this tier level, that will ensure that they are really accountable. And so within the tier, we're going to have criteria and requirement. In Ghana, you go to a sport organization, you want to find information about who are the decision makers. Most of them don't even have a website. There are no websites. There are no information about the board and the management in there. Financial statements have become a problem. How did you spend money? How did you receive money? Where are the payables? What are the profits? Do you incur any losses? We don't find this anywhere. This is a pure a character of poor governance. And I'll tell you a story. During my master's, I actually wanted to do something in sport governance. So I went to my professor, Vasil Gegenov. He is currently the president for European Association for Sport Management. I said, Prof, I want to do something in governance in my country. He says, okay, where do you want to? I said, in football. He says, okay. He pulled me to his office, pulled a chair, and typed Ghana Football Association. He said throughout the website, he wanted to find one financial statement to really substantiate the fact that I'll be able to get some information, do my data. He quickly pushed me away, that this is poor governance and I can't do that. I said, Prof, but you've never been to my country. He said, it doesn't really matter. And so in going forward, these are the things that we need, putting up criteria and requirements to meet the demanding sizes of the various sport organizations. We will ensure that their demands are met, appropriate funding are being given, and they are also being accountable to government. There's a need to empower and revamp the National Sports Authority to meet up its mandate. The minister has already touched on it. Tom has also touched on it. And Mr. Bafo has also touched on it. The Sports Act 934/2016 is very clear. There are a lot of responsibilities that have been given to the National Sports Authority. But in my view, we see the National Sports Authority inspecting stadiums. This should not happen. It is wrong. The National Sports Authority should have an oversight responsibility across all sport organizations. The sport organizations should be accountable to them how they have spent money that came from government. Then that could also go to the ministry, which will inform their budgets and all that. But this is the case that the National Sports Authority has been reduced to one sport agency or a unit in the country. This cannot be. So I will humbly call on the new Director General to really put up on the mandate of the National Sports Authority as far as governance is concerned, if we have to move forward. Now, there's a new LI that has been put up, and many people don't really talk about it, but as an academic, we have an LI 2477 that has been passed by Parliament. This is about governance. It directs sport practices within the country, even venue allocation, events, and all that. Look at our gyms. What are the requirements that they need to be able to take care of people that are coming in to exercise? The LI takes care of it. And this forms part of the governance processes. The NSA needs to take charge of this and regulate our sport industry within the gyms and recreation centers, that it boils to what Mr. Bafo said, to have qualified people within this area to be able to administer services to the Ghanaian people. School sports needs to be managed. This is where we get talents from. But interestingly, even physical education has been extracted from the public basic schools. This should not be and it shouldn't continue. There's the need to revive our school sports so that with the Schools and Colleges Federation, we can get in talents all along from that region to feed into the national basket of sport. There's the need to establish a committee of inquiry, and I humbly submit this to the minister. Expect who would understand the issues of organizational failures across the various sport organizations and submit that report for critique and for corrections that may come up. I also propose, going forward, looking at hooliganism that has become a major issue within our sport. And Mr. Bafo mentioned about the debt, which we all know about this. There's the need to have a sport intelligence unit. And this should be in collaboration with the ministry, the NSA, the Ghana police as well. Having a sport intelligence agencies that can advise us on security issues that was presented, attached to various clubs in the training of stewards within the stadium for them to understand the psychology of the fans so that they will be able to direct and guide them. Mr. Bafo presented on signages. These individuals will be there to understand this issue, to limit incidents that occurs within our stadium. It's important that we look at public-private partnership going forward. I was happy when Mr. Bafo talked about this partnership issue, and Tom as well. Naming rights, premium seating, all within the stadium will go a long way to bring about that investment that we look for. What is the way forward? There's the need for the development of a national sports governance code, which is similar to what the UK has developed, looking at the people that occupy the various sport organizations. What are their qualifications? What are their expertise? What is the diversity that we need? It is very important. The structure that they operate, their internal system, their internal policies, every sport organization should have a policy that will fit into the national policy. The level of communication that they undertake within the organization. The code will spell out all these guidelines for efficiency. The Ministry of Sport and Recreation should have engagement with academics and industry players to give insights and direction into our sport management. We need qualified personnel, and I'm happy this is cutting across all presentations. We need qualified personnel who understand the intricacies of sport management within our field. Coming from an academic perspective, research is very key. We need to undertake research. And so the ministry and the NSA may want to have a research fund for academics. And coming from the School of Sports and Exercise Medicine, our doors are open to partner with the NSA and the ministry as far as collaborations are concerned in ensuring that we put up our national sport policy and governance in a whole. Thank you very much.
Amazing, amazing. Very, very insightful, very insightful.